Good morning. It is December 1st, coming to you live from Seoul. We start with the stories making the headlines at this hour. President Yoon Suk-yeol has created a new post for policy planning and newly appointed 5 senior secretaries. The reshuffle comes as the president seeks to ramp up his policy drive ahead of his third term in office. The U.S. has sanctioned the North Korean cyber espionage group and 8 foreign-based agents in response to Pyongyang's recent launch of a military reconnaissance satellite. South Korea, the U.S., Japan, and Australia will also issue coordinated sanctions. Over in Gaza, more hostages have been released as the Israel-Hamas ceasefire was extended to a 7th day. With only hours remaining until the truce expires, mediators are seeking another extension. We start with a major reshuffle at the presidential office. President Yoon Suk-yeol has created a new post for policy planning and newly appointed his senior secretaries. This comes as the president seeks to ramp up his policy drive ahead of his third term in office. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday launched a new group for policy planning that will report directly to him as part of efforts to strengthen his policy drive. According to the announcement on Thursday morning, current Senior Secretary for Policy Planning Lee Jong-seok will be promoted to director of the group and will oversee work directly under the president.
The establishment of the Director of Policy position is to strengthen the coordination and consultation functions with the cabinet and the party, to accelerate the implementation of policies, and to more closely monitor economic policies in order to look after the livelihoods of the people.
Previously, only the Chief of Staff and the National Security Office worked directly under the president, with the Chief of Staff overseeing policy planning. The Director of Policy will be in charge of Senior Secretaries for Economic and Social Affairs, formerly under the Chief of Staff, as well as the soon-to-be-created Senior Secretary for Science and Technology. He will also be looked at as a level of minister.
Current economic indicators show recovery, but people are still facing difficulties. I'll prioritize taming inflation and use all available policies to do so.
This new office, while new for this administration, has been around under previous presidents. In fact, it was a role that President Yoon scrapped as he took office to minimize the size of the top office, but the revival shows President Yoon is motivated to put more effort into pushing policies harder. On top of this, President Yoon has new senior secretaries for all 5 remaining senior secretary positions who will start their roles next Monday. For public relations, former presidential spokesperson Lee Jong-seok has been promoted. For political affairs is also a promotion as Han Ho-seok, former secretary for state affairs monitoring, will take on the role. For civil and social agenda, Hwang Sang-moo, the former main anchor for Korea Broadcast Systems News, has been named. For economic affairs, Park Chun-seok and Chang Sang-yoon for social policy. As the new appointees briefly addressed the media, they all acknowledged that the situation is hard, whether it's social division or economic hardships. And as next year will bring President Yoon's 3rd year in office, while the country next April will vote for its National Assembly members, the new appointments will have a lot to get done right away. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The National Assembly approved the appointment of Justice Lee Jong-seok as Chief of the Constitutional Court, ending 3 weeks-long vacancy. Led by the main opposition party, it also introduced a motion to remove the Chief of the Broadcasting Watchdog, Lee Dong-kwan. Lee Si-hu reports.
During a plenary session on Thursday, the National Assembly gave its consent to the appointment of Lee Jong-seok, a current justice on the Constitutional Court of Korea, as the top court's new chief. The consent for appointment passed with 204 votes for, 61 against, and 26 abstentions among the 291 lawmakers present. Lee has served on the 9-member Constitutional Court since 2018. In addition, Democratic Party led motions to impeach Korea Communications Commission chairperson Lee Dong-kwan and 2 prosecutors seeking their removal from their posts were submitted to the Assembly. Some 168 lawmakers supported the motion to impeach Lee, citing violations of the law as the reason, emphasizing that he made 29 rulings with just another committee member.
He violated the purpose of the Commission and broadcasting laws enacted to ensure the independence and neutrality of the Korea Communications Commission.
Meanwhile, the ruling People Power Party objected to the impeachment motion.
None of the reasons for the impeachment of the chairperson of the Korea Communications Commission can be seen as a violation of the law or serious enough to justify the dismissal.
The motions to impeach must go through secret ballots between 24 and 72 hours after their submission. The main opposition, DP, is aiming to conduct voting on Friday. However, the ruling PPP is planning an overnight protest. The motion requires majority approval from current members of the Assembly, where the DP has a supermajority of 168 seats against the PPP's 111 out of the 298 total. If the motion passes, Lee will be suspended from his duties immediately until a ruling is made by the Constitutional Court, essentially paralyzing the operations of the KCC, which currently has only 2 decision-making members, Lee and his deputy, out of 5 possible. Some of the imminent pending issues at the KCC are the reauthorization of broadcasting stations' licenses that are due to expire and finalizing penalties against Google for forced in-app purchases. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
And President Yoon Suk-yeol has also approved the designation of Lee Jong-seok as a Constitutional Court chief, filling the 21-day vacancy following the retirement of his predecessor, Yoon Nam-seok. Meanwhile, President Yoon Suk-yeol will make a state visit to the Netherlands this month. That makes him the first South Korean leader to do so in 62 years of bilateral ties, as he seeks to strengthen semiconductor cooperation with the European country. In a press release on Friday, the presidential office said the President and First Lady Kim Gun-hee will depart Seoul on December 11th for a 4-day trip at the invitation of King William Alexander. The monarch will hold an official welcoming ceremony, luncheon, and a state dinner for Yoon on the first official day of the visit. And on the second day, the South Korean leader will meet with various members of government, including Prime Minister Mark Rutte. The two leaders will likely discuss economic security and semiconductor cooperation. Yoon's stay will also include a state visit to chip equipment company ASML and a roundtable of business leaders from both countries. The U.S. slapped more sanctions on North Korea in response to Pyongyang's recent launch of a military reconnaissance satellite. The new list includes cyber espionage group Kim Soo-ki, which is accused of supporting the North's weapons programs. There will also be coordinated sanctions by South Korea, the U.S., Japan, and Australia. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Department of Treasury announced Thursday that it had added a North Korean cyber espionage group and 8 foreign-based agents to the Office of Foreign Assets Control's sanctions list. Among those is Kim Soo-ki, the cyber espionage group which Washington says helped gather intelligence to support the North's strategic objectives. The Treasury Department added that the group uses spear phishing to target individuals employed by government, research centers, think tanks, academic institutions, and news media organizations, including entities in Europe, Japan, Russia, South Korea, and the United States. The Treasury Department also sanctioned 8 individuals, including Kang Kyung-il and Lee Sung-il, who are Iran-based representatives of Green Pine. Green Pine is an entity designated by the U.S. and UN for being responsible for about half of North Korea's arms and related material exports. It's also controlled by the North's Reconnaissance General Bureau, the North's primary foreign intelligence service, as it specializes in the production of maritime military craft and armaments. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced on Thursday that South Korea, the U.S., Japan, and Australia will coordinate to issue sanctions on North Korean individuals in response to the recent spy satellite launch. Blinken says it's the first time the 4 countries have issued coordinated sanctions on the regime. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea is aiming to launch its first indigenous military reconnaissance satellite on Saturday, 2 days later than initially planned due to bad weather. While North Korea has also recently put its own spy satellite into orbit, Seoul is seeking to use this key military asset to ramp up its capabilities in monitoring and deterring Pyongyang's attacks. For more on the launch, we're joined by Professor Kim Young-jun at the Korea National Defense University. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Professor, first of all, this is going to be a milestone endeavor for South Korea, given that it has so far been relying on the U.S. for satellite images of North Korea. What is the mission of the satellite and why is it important at this very stage of inter-Korean relations?
Yeah, this is a very important capability, especially for the Republic of Korea has developed a satellite program over the years, so-called 4 to 5 projects supported by Agency for Defense Development, we call ADD, and Defense Acquisition Program Administration, we call DAPA. Its objective is to have a total of 5 military satellites by mid-2020. Because over the years, over the decade, North Korea has developed their nuclear and missile capabilities. So the Republic of Korea must have a detect capability by having military satellite. This successful military satellite will allow the ROK Army to detect North Korea launching nuclear and missile program before it started. So the ROK and the U.S. must protect and have a deterrence capability against North Korea continuous provocation and possible use of the nuclear and missile by having our eye like military satellites. So this is also capability for a future world as well.
All right, the satellite will be launched from California atop SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Why does the launch have to be from that specific location using that spacecraft?
The choice of location is naturally based on the best possible launching site and definitely a better chance of success. The U.S. Vandenberg Air Force Base and California weather is generally not a problem, although today's plan has been changed due to the weather. So the plan to use SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket for the next satellite launch.
Okay, this will be the first of 5 satellites South Korea is aiming to put into orbit. Please tell us more about the other 4 and what is South Korea aiming to achieve once all 5 are successfully launched?
Yes, the 5 successful military satellites will make the ROK Army have a better detect and information capability beyond only dependence on the U.S. satellite capability. Over the years, we don't have a much higher capability to detect and information capability, especially against the North Korean nuclear and missile program. So next 4 satellite will be SAR satellite. It can show better quality of image to the 30 to 50 centimeters. So we'll have a more capability to detect a North Korean nuclear and missile program.
Now, it seems like the 2 Koreas are getting into a space race. North Korea may be ahead of the South on the timeline, but the South is known to be far ahead in terms of operation reliability and quality of images. All things considered, which side has more to gain or lose in this space race?
Yeah, this is because of North Korea provocation, but at the same time, this is a world phenomenon for the space capability, not just South and North Korea, but also worldwide, including major countries like US and Russia and China. The ROK capability is much stronger and better than ones of North Korea so far. In the space race, the ROK supported by the US will be a winner. In the end, the ROK would like to use this capability for defense purpose, not offensive purpose of North Korea by using nuclear and missile program. So international community and strong ROC U.S. alliance make the ROC have more capability from this list, and ROC will have its own detect information capability beyond largely dependence on the U.S., especially in terms of information capability. So now it's more like we can consider self-defense capability for the ROC army to have their own information capability for the future war.
All right, Professor, we will wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, over in Gaza, more hostages have been released as the Israel-Hamas ceasefire was extended to a 7th day. With only hours remaining until the truce expires, mediators are seeking another extension. Park Gun-woo with the latest.
Just 10 minutes before its expiration, Israel and Hamas agreed to extend their truce in the Gaza Strip under the same previous conditions for another extra day. The Israeli Prime Minister's office said on Thursday that the truce will continue as Israel was given a new list of women and minors for potential release beforehand, though not mentioning an exact number. Israel had agreed to extend the truce by 1 day for every 10 living hostages released and noted it would resume fighting if that condition was not met. Meanwhile, Qatar, one of the negotiators between Israel and Hamas, also confirmed the extension in a statement made by its foreign ministry on Thursday. The ministry added that negotiations continue in hope of reaching a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Thanks to continuous efforts by these mediators, including Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S., more captives are said to be released and more humanitarian aid convoys are scheduled to enter Gaza. Just before the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas was due to expire at 7 a.m. on Thursday local time, 16 hostages were released by Hamas, including 10 Israelis, 4 Thai nationals, and 2 Russians. They were handed over to the Red Cross late Wednesday on the 6th day of the truce and were taken to 5 different hospitals in Israel. In exchange, Israel also released 30 Palestinians, mostly women and minors. Over the first 5 days of the ceasefire, which began last Friday, Hamas released 81 hostages and Israel freed 180 Palestinians from prison, mainly women and minors. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., latest consumer data suggests that inflation is slowing down. This adds more anticipation that the Federal Reserve will hold its key interest rate steady for now. Shin Ye-eun reports.
New data on inflation, as measured by personal spending, showed price pressures are easing, likely giving the U.S. Federal Reserve more incentive to hold rates steady. According to a U.S. Commerce Department report released Thursday, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, excluding food and energy prices, rose 0.2% for October and 3.5% year-on-year. This is down from respective readings of 0.3% and 3.7% the previous month, and also in line with expert expectations by the Wall Street Journal. In addition, energy prices fell 2.6%. Goods prices saw a 0.3% decrease, while services rose 0.2%. On the services side, the prices of international travel, healthcare, food services, and accommodations saw the greatest gains. The PCE Price Index, a measure of prices that people living in the United States pay for goods and services, is often considered by the Fed in its policy making. Meanwhile, the New York Fed Bank President John Williams said on Thursday that tighter financial and credit conditions after the Fed raised its policy rate 5.25 percentage points in the last 20 months should help bring inflation down further. He explained that improvements in supply chains are also easing price pressures. Shin Ye-eun, Arirang News.
OPEC plus member countries on Thursday agreed to cut oil production output in the first quarter of 2024 by 1 million barrels per day. The announcement was made as Saudi Arabia, Russia, and other members of OPEC plus, who pump more than 40% of world's oil, met online and issued the announcement of voluntary cuts. The latest cut will bring the total production curve to 2.2 million barrels per day from the 8 producers. Global oil prices fell fell on the news as the production cut fell short of market expectations. At the New York Mercantile Exchange, West Texas Intermediate futures for delivery in January closed at $75.96, down 2.4%. Brent crude futures also fell 2.4%.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young. We now turn over to stories from around the world. The 30th meeting of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe's Ministerial Council officially started on Thursday and will last for 2 days in North Macedonia's capital, Skopje. Top diplomats from more than 50 countries arrived there on Wednesday, while Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, and later Poland and Romania officially boycotted the meeting in protest against the attendance of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The meeting of the 57-member OSCE began with a degree of tension on Thursday, as Lavrov claimed that it was in deplorable shape and that its prospects are unclear, while reaffirming the Kremlin's opposition to the US and NATO allies' efforts to limit Russia's influence. Lavrov commented that the OSCE is essentially being turned into an appendage of NATO and the European Union. This was the first time Russia's top diplomat has visited a NATO member nation since his country invaded Ukraine in February 22. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a brief stop on Wednesday but left for Israel hours later. Now moving on to our next story. Russia's Supreme Court on Thursday ruled to declare the international LGBTQ public movement as extremist and has banned its activities. The court hearing was held behind closed doors with no defendants, while some reporters were allowed to hear the court's decision. The lawsuit filed by the Justice Ministry earlier this month argued that it has identified signs and manifestations of extremist nature by an LGBTQ+ movement operating in Russia, including incitement of social and religious discord. While there has been a decade-long crackdown on LGBTQ rights in Russia, this move is seen as the most drastic step taken so far. Many international human rights and LGBTQ+ rights activists are raising concerns over the safety of the members of their community in Russia. Footballer Cristiano Ronaldo is facing a class action lawsuit in the US seeking at least $1 billion in damages over his promotion of cryptocurrency exchange company Binance. The claimants are suing for lost investments, alleging that Ronaldo's promotion of his personal brand of NFTs released by Binance was deceptive and unlawful. They say this led to a 500% increase in searches for the crypto exchange, linking to sales of unregistered securities, such as Binance's BNB cryptocurrency. Claimants also argued that Ronaldo never disclosed how much he was getting paid in promotion for investment in securities. In November 2022, Binance announced CR7 collection of NFTs referring to his initials and shirt number. The NFTs, which were at $77 upon release, have since fallen to about $1. Now moving on to our last story of the day, the last pair of giant pandas living in the UK are set to return to China in early December. Yang Guang and Tian Tian have been on loan to the Edinburgh Zoo since 2011 under a 10-year contract, which was extended by the China Wildlife Conservation Association for an extra 2 years. The pandas were among the most popular animals at the Edinburgh Zoo, but Thursday was the final opportunity to see giant pandas at the Edinburgh Zoo or indeed anywhere else in the UK. The giant pandas will return home to China in early December.
Good morning. December starts with a mid-winter-like vibe in many places. A cold wave advisory remains in place for Gangwon-do and surrounding regions, seeing the mercury going down to below -10 degrees this morning. Meanwhile, snow continues in the west coast regions of Jeollado provinces and Jeju, which will continue into late this afternoon. But a mix of rain and snow will last through tonight on Jeju Island. A heavy snow advisory is in place for parts of Jeollado provinces and mountainous regions in Jeju, so please drive and walk with caution and stay safe. Afternoon highs will be similar to a couple of degrees higher than yesterday. Seoul tops out at 2 degrees, Daejeon at 4 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Sunny skies in store except in Jeollado and Jeju today. The air should feel much more comfortable from tomorrow afternoon. Then we can expect much more bearable temperatures next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all for today. Thanks for watching.